I was motivated to use professional media, social media for my research purposes because everyone in my community, all my colleagues were doing it, and I felt like I was missing out. And I was quite ignorant to what was available for professional uses, though I already was using Facebook for private personal uses. And then my colleagues got me in touch with the world of Twitter and websites and so on. That's how it happened. I use multiple social media platforms, and each social media platform that I use is for a different purpose. So I'll start off with Google Scholar and other sort of online sort of accounting, I guess, in regards to paper accounting profiles such as Scopus, Web of Science and Google Scholar. And then I also use what's called ResearchGate, which is sort of like another online profile for papers, but it also allows a little bit of automation, rather a little bit of sort of communication, and then I can write my profile in there and provide some information about myself and what I do. I can also load my papers onto there as well. I use Twitter as a means of communicating my research to other people and also to find out about their research, but I also use Twitter as a means of understanding what's happening more generally in the environmental sphere, which is the discipline that I work in. And so I follow newspapers like, and particular components of newspapers like, for example, the environment section of The Guardian. I also use LinkedIn, but I use LinkedIn more to connect with my students and my colleagues from more of a professional networking way than in a communication way, I guess. And then I also maintain a personal website as well, lanagresh.net, which is where I have a little blog, which I very rarely write onto, where I post information about my citations, so my papers, my reports, who my students are in regards to my HDR students and what they're doing. So I actually use quite a lot of different social media tools. What social media has done for me, which wasn't available for me to do 10 years ago because social media didn't exist, was to connect with a much wider group of people, but not only to connect with them, but to like establish proper relationships with them, even though that's kind of a bit weird to say that because it's in a unreal space, it's the, you know, internet world space. But for example, there were people that I knew from work who you sort of occasionally would see in the corridor. But through social media, I actually became more connected with them, and we started having a more sort of, we started interacting more in the real world as well as because of these unreal world interactions, which is kind of weird, but it was sort of interesting. Sort of cool. So it's helped me to establish and then also maintain relationships, both with the community that I have here in my department, but also internationally as well. A lot of academics in my department are using Twitter, and that's because academics really like to use Twitter. And we use Twitter as a way of sort of tweeting out our research, but also to connect with other people's research and also to follow newspapers and so on and post photos of our field work and things like that. And for some reason, it's something that really fits well with what sort of people of my discipline and also sort of my career stage are really interested in. And sort of, yeah, so. I think the danger lies with the user. So for example, I followed a particular scientist on Twitter, and then I noticed that this particular scientist was actually a bit of a troll and was saying quite rude things to people on Twitter in response to their tweets and targeting particular people. And I thought that was really irresponsible and looked really bad on that person, and I unfollowed them on Twitter. And even though they're a very big person in my discipline, I have no intention of ever engaging with them in a professional way. So the risk from social media actually comes from the user, the individual. We create our own risks. So the key rule is don't be an arsehole on social media. A really fun story is I was at a conference last year in Cairns, and I was using a hashtag to tweet some interesting things that were happening in that conference. The conference hashtag was something like ATBC 2014. And so I was tweeting something, and then someone responded to my tweet. And we're tweeting we're sort of having this Twitter conversation, and then we realised that we're just sitting behind each other. Because I looked at the photo and then the person behind me, and I was like, oh, this is the same person. So yeah, so it has been good at being able to sort of engage people in reality as well as in the unreal world of the internet. There are, well, the old school way, which is a way I still use, is that when a journal that is big in my field comes out, you know, every month or every second month or every quarter, you have a look at the table of contents and you see what's in there and you take a read. So that's a traditional way of doing it. That's the way that the old professors do it, and it's kind of still the way that I do it. But I generally only target 1 or 2 journals which are in my area, which are really big, like conservation biology, conservation letters. But what I do more now than that, I would have to say, is find interesting articles through what people tweet. So I know that when I read an interesting article, I will tweet it, and then other people might take a look at it. And I do the same. When other people tweet an interesting article, I'll read that article. And that's why we're getting to the point now that research is showing that the more an article is tweeted or delivered through social media, presented through social media, the higher citations it gets, because it's actually becoming more available to people. It's more easily accessible than having to troll through the hundreds of journals that are in your field and the hundreds of tables of contents that are in your field, like every month. I think it is incredibly important for researchers to track the impact of their research. Impact is an interesting word because it means lots of different things to lots of different people. So in a traditional impact sense, that will mean how many papers that you've published, the impact factor of the journals that you publish in, and how many times your papers are cited. But we're now moving, and other countries are moving quicker than us, but hopefully we're going to follow soon. We're moving into another space where impact means sort of more implications for industry, for commercial practice, for government practice, and for policy and so on. Social media does provide a mechanism for measuring that kind of impact by sort of, I guess, for example, if you tweet something that you've written in the conversation or a policy briefing or an article, that might be retweeted and then sort of explode, and that is a potential indicator that it might translate into impact. So social media, I guess, is a part of that bigger picture. It's helping that change. Does social media sort of boost your academic credentials or academic standing? Yes and no. So it definitely, I think I have a much bigger profile now because I have lots of social media accounts and I'm connected to people that way. So I think more people know who I am and what I do than they would if I didn't have social media. But on the other hand, there's still some pushback. As we were talking about before, there's some pushback in disciplines in regards to social media. And, you know, perhaps in my department I'm sort of considered as that odd one that likes social media, but, you know, it's the flavour of the month thing and it doesn't mean anything. Well, so it can kind of work in both ways at the moment. But, you know, that's changing really quickly, and those people are going to be left behind soon. And so I wouldn't worry too much about that. I'm not personally offended about it, but, you know, I am aware that some people might not take me so seriously because I use social media, but I don't care. What I believe it takes to be an insider in my discipline is quite a few things. So at the core of it, you actually need to be good at what you do. You need to be a good scientist, you need to use the appropriate methods, and you need to be able to communicate that to a scientific audience. But in addition to that, because once again I'm in the environmental sciences, you also need to be able to communicate your research to a lay audience and to government or to Indigenous rangers or whoever that audience is. And social media provides you with, I guess, good training to be able to do that and to be able to target that message to the right audience. if I was going to give one critical piece of advice in regards to how research students use social media, it would be this, and I said it earlier, don't be an arsehole, because it is different to being mean to someone in face to face. It's recorded for entirety, for everyone to see on the internet forever. So be really careful about how you talk to people, how you treat people, and what you say.